Hello, everyone. My name is Apostle Aladdin. Welcome back to the show. We've had some technical difficulties in the past few weeks, but we are back. And for those asking for updates, how jihad proofing the show is progressing, we're working on it. But for the time being, we're here, and I'll keep you posted if anything changes. Today's live stream, like the previous one, is for female ex-Muslims to call in, and I'll even take female Muslims if you would like to join, though I didn't put that in the thumbnail. But the idea is I want to give an inclusive and safe space for women and girls who would like to call and talk about their experience with Islam, whether they're Muslim or ex-Muslim. That is the target audience today, or target caller audience today. And it seems like we already have a queue of callers who would like to join. And thank you so much. I got to pause and thank everybody for their support on the previous video, where I talked about the issues that we're facing with live streaming. A lot of moral support. A lot of people donated, which I appreciate very much. I don't think that there's going to be a barrier in terms of cost anymore. So don't you worry about that. I will take care of that, even if I have to handle everything with a new computer if need be. But anyway, things are going great, and a lot of people have volunteered to help moderate. I haven't responded to a lot of people yet. I will as soon as I can, but for the time being, we already have a moderator today, so be on your best behavior. And thank you to the moderator for helping me out. So, all that being said, we have a queue of callers who are ready to join. So, moderator, please let me know who the next caller is, and I'll add them as soon as they're ready. It feels amazing to have someone else do all that side of things for me. But I wonder if I'll just get bored with not having anything to do except vamp in the meantime. Okay, so Delilah is ready. Hey there, Delilah. I hope you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going? You are muted. It's a work in progress, guys. Hello, are you there? Delilah, please do unmute yourself if you are there and if you're real. Got me wondering if everyone's pretending to be someone they're not. Okay. Maybe Delilah is not ready, so I will remove Delilah for the time being. Who's next in queue? Moderator, please let me know. Let me see if I'll read any comments in the meantime. Jordan says, pretty good viewer to like ratio, but it could be even better. That's what I say. So hit that like button if you would like. Okay, so I'll assume Flower is ready. I'm going to go with Flower. I hope you are ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going? Flower, you need to unmute yourself. I don't know if we're running into... Okay, Flower is not on the stream anymore. A lot of technical difficulties. Well, in the meantime, look at Apu, as always, sleeping peacefully. If there's going to be one constant in this live stream, it's just going to be Apu sleeping back there. So we've got Sid and KK still in the private chat. Sid, we've spoken in the last live stream and in a couple of previous ones, so I would like to have you on, but I'd like to make sure first that we get new callers or give other people priority. So I'll start with KK. I'm going to take a risk here. Kay, I hope you're ready. Hey, how's it going?
I am going great. How are you doing?
Finally, we've got someone. I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Not fake.
You seem to be real, so I'm very relieved to hear your voice. Have we spoken before?
Yes, quite a few months ago, I would say, when you just started doing the live streams, really.
Okay.
And then I sort of kept watching in the shadows and did not come forward again. So yeah, how are you doing? I tuned into your live stream yesterday. So how are you dealing with all of that?
A lot better today, thankfully. And like I said, a lot of people reached out. A lot of people sent me supportive messages, and I appreciate that. And I'm working on a technical solution that's a bit more elegant than what we're doing now. But for the time being, I'm glad that I was able to host this today, and I'm glad that you were able to join.
Yes, I appreciate that. I was
Mm.
I was worried it would be the death of the live stream, but I'm glad to see that you're still kicking. You know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, still here.
so yeah. So I guess what do I want to talk about today? Last time I was here, I talked a bit about how being a Muslim, being in a Muslim household, made it very difficult for me to get diagnosed. A little bit of recap. I suffered from pretty severe depression as a child, which is very difficult to diagnose anyway in children because it just sort of presents as irregularities in mood, amongst other things. But I remember feeling totally failed by religion and praying multiple times a day, reading the Quran, reading these du'as that my parents gave me, right? Instead of getting taken to a psychiatrist or a neurologist for the slew of like medical symptoms that I had, and being told that if you are, and this is something I've been told as a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, that the only reason why anyone suffers is because Allah is erasing some sort of sin that you have committed. And so just it being ingrained in me as a child, that I had done something bad or I am bad. Um, and God says so is just, it's not great. It's something you carry with you, I think, for many years of the life. And I feel like there are probably others who have experienced what I've experienced. And I'm sort of going into yep, exactly. I'm sort of trying to find a space where I feel safe and comfortable to maybe do a little bit of my own activism and, speak out on Instagram or Twitter. And I find that I've run into expected unique challenges as a woman. The amount of like sexual assault threats, and the amount of just the filth you get in your inbox as a woman. Like I really admire like Infidel Noodle and Harami Doodles and like everyone out there I see who's doing the same thing, because like my God, and I do not even have like a quarter or an inch of the visibility that some of the other female activists have. So yeah, it's a bit of a struggle, and I felt like it's honestly a little depressing. Not gonna lie to you. Like you think you're prepared for it, but really when it happens and you expect that to happen, you're just like, ugh, you know, what do I do here? But it's
I mean, I'm tempted to ask if you don't mind me asking some clarification questions about the
Mhm.
kind of assault, harassment that you get. Um, is that a problem if we talk about it a little bit for
No,
a
of course
second?
not. Go ahead.
Because I don't think people realize the magnitude of it or what that looks like really. So, what do you post on that page where you get this kind of harassment?
So mostly I post about my experiences as an ex-Muslim woman, how it has affected me and my relationships with my family, um, rape culture, purity culture. The first words that came out of my dad's mouth, for example, when he found out that I had been sexually assaulted, was first he misheard me and he said, "Oh, I heard you say you were sexually corrupted," and I was like, "No, that's not what I said." I was 16 at the time, and he breathes like this sigh of relief, and he goes, "Oh, okay, good. Well, you should have said something," you know, and that sort of those sort of experiences, that stem from how this crazy like weird purity culture that Islam has like propagated, and how like it sort of turned my body and the body of my sister and the body of like my female cousins into like either a weapon or just something totally objectified. And that's what I talk about mainly, to be honest. And because it's been like 20 years and like literally not enough therapy. So that's, I would say, the main content of how it affects me as a woman and how I see it affect my siblings. Um, and aside from that, just general, I would say, talking points that Muslims apologists like to make in favor of these or in favor of the Quran. So sort of gentle deconstructions of that. Um, but it centers all around the female experience, really. If that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that was the response that you received at the time from your dad, first and foremost, and then from people when you try to talk about it. Um, yeah, I just wanted people to understand what it is that you said that had provoked. Not that there's anything that you could have said that would have justified their harassment, but what you said wasn't even, from what I'm understanding, it wasn't that you were making a mockery out of their religious symbols, and so in retaliation, they're threatening you to stop. It seems like just talking about how Islam has harmed you as a woman is causing them to threaten you with more harm. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I've been told that maybe I should have worn a hijab. I did wear a hijab. I was wearing a hijab because I wanted to. I was one of those progressive Muslims. I went from there to being like a Quranist because the hadith were problematic. And then I think this is the natural timeline of becoming an ex-Muslim. So it's just honestly, and then when you tell them, oh, I did used to wear a hijab, someone was like, can you prove it? Do you have photos? Can you show us how you wore your hijab? It's just like I have to fight for everything to be taken seriously, and my opinions are not valid. And I know that if I were to post a photo, right, of the type of hijab I wore, it still wouldn't have been good enough, right? Like, what's the end goal here? I don't really understand.
I mean, I think the end goal is just to find a reason why that happened that does not, at the end of the day, fall on God or on one of his followers. I mean, at worst, they might scapegoat a Muslim and say, that was a bad Muslim who did this. I'm sorry that happened, but that has nothing to do with Islam, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, they want none of the criticism to fall on the religion or any of its symbols. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like, and I know that you've run into this as well, as I'm sure we all have. There's like two different like rhetorics, right? There's the rhetoric that, you're doing it wrong, your hijab is wrong, or maybe you're going out after 10 p.m. or like whatever, right? And then there's the rhetoric of this is not real Islam, sister. Real Islam, this, and this, right? These are not real Muslim men who like treated you like this, or your family was inappropriate for talking like this. And this comes up a lot, but I'm still kind of baffled by like, what is the line then? Like, what is and what isn't true? Is it all political? Right? Like, people have argued that, oh, even the hadith, or like, even though I was a Quranist, hadith were compiled as part of a political tool, or the Quran was compiled politically, which sort of leaves me at, so what can you believe if it's all political? Is it just the version in your head? Right? Like, what is it? Don't need to invalidate anyone's experiences, I think. But it's just a lot. Honestly, I receive way more engagement from trolls. But I still hope that maybe somewhere out there someone can relate, and maybe it's doing some good somewhere to somebody out in space. You know what I mean?
I'm sure it's making a difference. I'm sure it's helping, and I hope you're not discouraged by these attempts. And I think that, getting into arguments about what the Quran really is and if it was political or not very often is a complete distraction from the actual problem. Because at the end of that discussion, whatever conclusion you get to doesn't get you a step closer to making the problem, to solving the problem in the Muslim world. If the response to you talking about it is you're doing something wrong, what did you do to deserve this or to bring this upon yourself? That is the first point of discussion right there. It's not, what interpretation of the Quran do you think is real? The reality is this is what Islam is doing, or at least this is what a lot of the followers of Islam seem to behave like. Because I don't think it's. I mean, I'm sure it happens with other religions, but I think Islam takes the first place for being the worst in that department, don't you think?
No, I do agree, and it's tricky, right? Because we're sort of at a point where like Muslims are like a minority, and so they do receive a lot of anti-Muslim hate. But at the same time, this is like the pretty recent topic of like, being we should be able to criticize Islam, right? Like we should be able to do it. I live in Canada, where recently there were a lot of protests about Pride Month. I believe in Ottawa, Ontario, there were a few protests where I think you might have heard of it, where families were like, it's going to be a peaceful protest, but then people came out and they broke pride flags and they were chanting slurs, and they were not peaceful, to say. And I actually know people who live in Ottawa who went to one of the schools there that was having this protest. And they were telling me that they actually overheard some of their teachers talking about how they were going to stop providing as much sort of attention to, the minority community of Muslims now. And they were going to start focusing their efforts more onto like the queer community. And there's this general sort of upset about how like we welcome you here, we provide you a place to feel safe, and sort of how dare you make this place unsafe for a different minority community, right? And so as like someone who comes from a Muslim family, I naturally do have concerns about this, about more anti-Muslim bigotry. But at the same time, like it's so tricky, isn't it? Like it's so conflicting. And it's just I don't know how to resolve this, or how it's going to be resolved in the next couple of years probably to come. I don't see where this goes or how it unfolds.
That's tricky because, as you put it, so people have been giving attention to Muslims, positive attention, seeing them as a minority when we're talking about places where Muslims are not a majority,
Mhm,
which most of the time Muslims are a majority. Let's not forget that.
mhm.
Most of what I'm talking about, or say, for example, in Canada, like you're talking about, Muslims are a minority. With one flight, they send the girl back to whatever country they're from, and suddenly she's among Muslims and they can get away with anything. We're not just discussing how should we handle less than 1% of Muslims globally. No, like this is a problem that happens more often in areas where Muslims are a majority. So I feel like it's usually a distraction to say, but look at how sometimes Muslims are, treated in a bigoted way. Sometimes, doesn't that make it all go away? It really doesn't. They're two unrelated things, but we're getting to a point where I want people to see how Muslims really behave towards others that they don't like. Like, for example, towards gay people. I want them to put their homophobia on full display because I'm tired of dealing with it in secret. I it's hard to see people romanticize something like Islam and then see it blow up in their faces later, and just sit there and say, I told you so, but no one was listening.
Yeah, and it's and the this was a conversation I was having with my friend who lives in Ottawa, where she was like, "Well, if you go to public school, your kids go to public school, and like it or not, people from all different backgrounds and minorities are going to be in public school. If you don't like it, take your kid to an Islamic school." which in my opinion is like a whole other issue, right? Because in Islamic school, you're more sort of, you have no exposure. You're in Islamic school. My brother went to Islamic school. It was not good. It was not good. And it was oddly sexual. Like I don't know why, but for some reason they were teaching like 12-year-olds about masturbation. Like why? Under what circumstance?
But
Um,
especially, what were they teaching about it?
um, that it's bad, but also sex before marriage is also bad. But
Yeah.
also, it might be okay to do it if it prevents you from having sex before marriage. It was weird, honestly. It was weird. But it's like, why are you teaching a 12-year-old this? That aside, um, like that's the whole other can of worms. Um, and that brings me to, you know, I had this sort of wave of just like anxiety when I saw that news, because at the same time I saw how, I think it was in Michigan, where like an all Muslim council banned pride flags, and I was like, oh my god, like the more conservative Muslims we have, the more likely they are to get elected and actually start forming policy or backtracking policy. And I'm just like, it, how can we address this without like going like full right wing anti-immigrant? I'm an immigrant, right? Like I'm an immigrant, and if I did not move to Canada, I probably would not have been alive. Islam and depression would have definitely killed me. Like just saying that. And so, and the same thing is for my family. Like my siblings, I love them so much. They've really like made like a total 180 when we moved out of a Muslim country, right? Everyone went from being conservative to being progressive and being accepting and being tolerant, right? And I'm lucky, I'm very privileged that I can actually be openly ex-Muslim with my siblings, and they are supportive and they're understanding, and they don't shut me down, they don't snitch on me, they don't rat me out. And I don't think that's true for a lot of people, but we wouldn't have had that if we hadn't been able to leave, right? um, it's so weird. Like it's such a weird situation for people to be in right now.
It's really unfortunate because it's not that ex-Muslims don't want Muslims to be in the same space as them. Like, first of all, the end goal is not for ex-Muslims to find safe haven outside of their countries, outside of wherever they come from, outside of Muslim majority countries, and that's a great plan. I hope that someday we can coexist wherever it is that we think is home. You know, like it doesn't have to be that you have to immigrate somewhere else so that you can be safe. But what's worse is that now I think things are going in a direction that even when you immigrate, you're not necessarily safe from their wrath. And that's the problem. That's why some people who leave Islam then turn to the other side and they're anti immigration, for example. They're like, well, I don't want any of that coming into the place that I made home. Why should I bring that over here? Or why should I allow that to come in here? So it's like, what's your position on all that? Like, say, for example, in Canada where you are, if someone um, is openly homophobic, do you think that they deserve to immigrate to that country to be with you?
So if someone is openly homophobic in like an outside country, and do they deserve to immigrate to Canada? Is that
Yeah.
your
Do you think that should be criteria to disqualify them?
It's weird, right? Because there are people who are like natural born Canadians, quote unquote, who are also homophobic,
Hmm.
right? And who are also like anti-abortion and anti-trans and like all these things, that the values that I have, right? Um, but it's honestly, I feel like the current system is horrible. I watched this, I think it was the Friendly Ex-Muslim, or it might have been you, where there was a live stream or a chat with Somalian ex-Muslims, and one of the women on the chat talked about how she worked in like mental health services in Australia, I think, with a lot of other Somali Muslims, and she talked about how there's just like this gigantic culture shock from when people moved from Somalia to, to Australia, I believe, and they don't really know the culture very well. They don't know the language, and so there's no really there's no mental health services or counseling or any sort of like education or training provided to help them transition, right? And honestly, I think if there was something like that, I think actually putting structural, making structural changes or putting structural sort of little, I can't think of the word, but just integrating it into the structure of immigration, I think would is much more useful than just banning people from immigrating. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And people change, right? Like for myself, I was one of those quote unquote progressive Muslims. I'm doing like the air quotes in my hand with my hands, where I was like, I was never, I never thought that being gay was an illness or a sin. But for me, it was more like, let's just leave them alone, you know? And I thought I was so progressive by saying that. But I've known people who have changed their opinions once they moved here. Um, but that is because of increased exposure, right? And being able to give people who are not in your little group a chance, being willing to talk to them and not just othering them. I have seen though that when you move from an outside country and move to like a new country, I sort of moved here with a preconception of what non-Muslims were like, when I lived back in the Middle East, sort of. So I'm actually from Pakistan, and my family's from Pakistan, but I lived in the Middle East for a very long time. But so when I moved from there, you kind of have this perception of like the other, and then to come here and have that like so directly challenged, it really sort of broke some of the mental models I had of people, of sexuality, of just different things. But I find that people who I see who are conservative, who are growing up here with children, are also conservative because they don't have an us versus them, right? They can't move to a new country and have their mental model of the other broken. They're already in the country with the other. So whatever information is sort of being passed to them by their parents accounts for that fact, if that makes sense. Like the information you're giving to your kid in a country, right? In the other country, there's nothing for you to challenge. It's all there, right? Like you're being told to stay away from the gay kids, right? Don't associate with people who are queer. They're there and they're weird, so don't do it. As opposed to you coming in from an outside country and being like, oh, well, I guess I can associate with these people. Like, I guess I can do this. Let me see what it's all about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's a little black and white, but I hope I'm sort of making some sense there.
Yeah, I mean, I can personally relate to that. When I first moved out from the Middle East, I had certain ideas about non-Muslims and gay people, for example, and it wasn't until I really met them that it changed. Like it was a very big contrast from years and years of hearing the same rhetoric and jokes and all sorts of characterizations of them, and then meeting some of them in person. I imagine if I grew up with them and I heard the rhetoric simultaneously, maybe I would have built rationalizations from a very young age. Like this doesn't fit what I learned about them, but it must make sense because so and so, as opposed to having that shock, that build up and then just meeting them all at once. So maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I think it does need to be recognized as an issue. Like if I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like Islamization, that's a bit of a no, that's a bit of a right wing charged term. I don't mean that, but I'm just concerned to see increased conservatism over here as a result of more conservative Muslims sort of moving over. And like you said, I do fear a bit for my life now. given the threats that I have in my inbox at this moment. So it's easy to say that, oh, they're just empty words, right? They're just threats. But it's well, it just takes one time, right? So you just have to be careful. Like, why do you wear a mask? You know?
Yeah.
Um, so, but anyways, thanks for hearing me out today.
Of course.
I'm gonna let some of your other callers in, hog the mic a little bit. So I will go. I will go do that. I'll go hang out, and I'm gonna just chill. And I'm looking forward to hear what everyone else has to say.
I'm glad you were able to join us today, and hoping to maybe hear from you again another time if you would like to join.
Yes, probably,
Yeah,
likely. All right.
sounds good.
Take care, friend.
You too. Bye bye. All right. Thanks again, KK, for being the first real caller today. So, I'll read a few comments and then we'll get to the next caller because we. Oh yeah, I forgot to ask KK on stream. A lot of people are asking where they can find your page. So if you want to plug that in the live chat, feel free, and everyone can see it that way. And I'd like to thank the Popo Lion Paradise Loin, the Popo Loin Paradise. Thank you for becoming a member. I really appreciate it. No, I did not hear about this, but I'll read this comment anyway. And I'll see how it says, that reminds me, did you hear about the news about the teacher in Edmonton, Canada, telling her Muslim students they don't belong here if they don't stand with gay people? I have not heard about that. Um, I I want to be careful with such decisive language because I know most of what it's going to do is make them double down with what their family taught them and just think, see, those Canadians don't want us here. We we hate the kuffar. We need to go back to like being a Muslim ummah and all that rhetoric and all that kind of stuff. Um, I really don't know how to approach such people. Maybe trying to get them to understand that just like they want the world around them to be inclusive towards them and their beliefs, and at least not give them hate for existing, they should view gay people the same way. But the problem is that they see that there's a moral fault and some kind of evil in that gay person, so they see it as morally justified. But if you were to try to explain the same logic to them, what if someone sees that Islam is morally evil and they see that it's justified to take it out on you? They wouldn't even see the parallels there, but maybe drawing the parallels would help them maybe relate to it. That would be my approach. AT-Rex, thanks a lot for the super chat. They say the not real Islam hashtag happens in Muslim majority countries. They say this is culture, not Islam. What role does Islam have in shaping the culture? That's a good point. So there are, pick any two countries in the Middle East, and they would have a lot of things in common. And there might be factors that cause them to have these cultural similarities, but one big similarity that they have is Islam. Very often, that kind of culture meshes with Islam. Very often, when you teach people that a woman is almost shameful to see, like to see a woman's hair is shameful for her, for you, for everyone involved. It's like seeing a boob pop out. You shouldn't look away. It brings shame, and you should be ashamed. You should have jealousy. And then it teaches in other parts of the religion, well, you can discipline your women if they don't listen to you and if they don't hide their shame, and so on and so forth. It's just building blocks to get them to those conclusions and those behaviors where, okay, it's justified to beat my daughter if a little bit of her hair was showing, or if she doesn't want to wear the hijab, or whatever other example. So I think it's obviously religion plays a huge role in shaping that culture. And if it coincidentally happens to be that a lot of countries or groups with the same religion have the same culture, how could that happen? I feel like correlation is causation in that case. Iman Music asks, why is it important to pinpoint the disturbing aspects of Islamic culture beyond the ex-Muslim community then? What are your targets? So a lot of people I mean, ex-Muslims we're barely a community at the moment, but if we're talking about people who are openly out and the issues that they face, that's one thing. But there are a lot of people who aren't out of the religion either because they can't, or they don't know that's an option, or they don't even care about religion that much. They just want to exist and they suffer similar consequences. It's not only about the person who says openly, "Hey, I have left the religion. What consequences am I going to face?" A lot of people face those consequences without even leaving, by just not adhering the right way, or even by adhering, they're still facing a lot of these issues. So I talk about them for whoever can relate and whoever is harmed by them, whether they are ex-Muslim or not. Yeah. All right. I will take the next caller. I hope you are ready. I'm adding you right now. Hey, how's it going, Delilah?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. How are you?
I am doing great. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, hanging in there. Um, fighting the patriarchy and all that stuff.
The usual. Yeah.
Your usual, yeah. So yeah, I mainly wanted to continue our conversation from last time, essentially along the theme of recovering from Islam, because there's a lot that goes into that. Unfortunately, I'm realizing, and it's
Can you
fun.
give us a recap of what we talked about last time?
Sure, yeah. Let's see, off the top of my head, last time we talked about mental health, recognizing the signs of like mental hangups like anxiety, especially anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, or just like very, I guess, common sort of issues that pop up among Muslims. Let's see what else. Relationships with my family and how that's sort of been very much affected by me leaving Islam and just me not being able to see them in the same light anymore. um, what else? I think those were the main things. But there's definitely a lot more I would like to talk about in that regard, but I'm also still discovering a lot in that area. But I kind of wanted to talk today about some things that Islam never taught me, and I wish someone did, because it really would have helped me out a lot in life. And they're just such basic things, and it's like, look, in hindsight, I'm like, man, Islam really filled my head with a lot of just completely useless crap, and there's nothing I can do with it. All I can do is just learn the things that I actually needed to learn. And I guess like just let myself continue to forget the things that I did learn in Islam that just never helped me in any way. And I guess along that line, it is kind of I guess a little upsetting that we have spent so much time and effort, memorizing the Quran, learning, how to pray 5 times a day, learning all the little rules about farting and having your period, and just the dumbest things that don't matter, learning the nuances of these little things that absolutely do not matter, and focusing on just the completely wrong things and completely missing things that are actually like fulfilling or important, or just make us feel alive, I guess. um and so I guess I just want to talk about some of that. I guess to get started, the first thing that comes to mind is the absolute importance of physical health. Somehow that just never, like, maybe it was my upbringing, but it was never like a priority in our household. We like, I remember just always struggling in gym class, like being like the slowest person, and like not, like, barely being able to run a mile, just like weird things like that. And I always wondered like why. I mean, when I was younger, I definitely wondered like why I was so slow and all that stuff. And then like I got a little older and I realized, oh, it's because I'm not working out enough. And then it was like, oh, I'm not working out enough because I'm not allowed to leave the house. and and then it just like went from there. And I had to wait until college to be allowed to go to the gym and like actually exercise, which is just so wild. Like it's such a basic necessity to be able to like run around and like get exercise and just have fun, and we can't even do that, and it harms us in so many ways that we don't realize. So the first
Were you
thing.
given explicit reasons that why you can't exercise when you were younger?
Oh, well, so the main reason was just not being allowed to go outside. Like, we were never allowed to like go to like visit any friends or anything. Like obviously we had helicopter parents, but we weren't allowed to do extracurricular activities.
Did they tell
There
you
was
why?
because Islam just it was like a general like, no, you can't, like you have to focus on praying and being a good Muslim and memorizing the Quran, and you're not allowed to do like you're not basically not allowed to have fun. Like I remember wanting to learn a musical instrument, and Islam was used as a reason to not do that because music is haram. um so like and like I realized this as a kid. It's not even like a big discovery. It was like Islam was always the reason why I couldn't do anything, and it never like actually made any sense to me, and I just kind of had to accept it. And it's like, okay, but now it's actually harming me, so what am I supposed to do about that? um but so anyway, like because of like Islam being used as a reason to control me and control like the things that I learn and experience, and prevent me from like playing sports or learning it, learning how to play any kind of music, like pretty much learning how to do any kind of like creative or extracurricular like enrichment of any kind was forbidden. And I guess I just didn't realize like how important all of that actually is. Like it never occurred to me to think about like what I was missing out on. It was just, oh, that's for like people who aren't Muslim, and if they want to waste their time with learning how to play the piano, they can waste their time. Like I'm gonna I'm gonna pray and like do whatever Islam tells me to do, and by doing that I'll be better off, even though in reality I would be worse off, and I wouldn't be developing myself in any way. I would just be stuck. And that's pretty
So
much like the
you
go
felt that
ahead.
you'd be better off eventually, that you're winning at life somehow compared to those people?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, as a Muslim, that's how I felt. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is so wrong. That wasn't like accurate in any way. Um, but yeah, so this is just like the first point. But yeah, exercising, like being physically fit, is so important, and I wish that was more emphasized in my life as growing up, I guess. Um, and the other side of that is also like growing up not being allowed to um, exercise, or like not being able to build those habits in general. It makes it so much harder trying to build those habits as an adult. And like I feel like I've been trying for so long to develop like a regular fitness routine, and I only managed to actually do it after like maybe like 5 years of like just thinking about it, and like eventually like something stuck, and then like I was able to get on some kind of a routine. But it took a lot of effort for me. And I guess that I didn't I actually just thought of this. I didn't write it down, but like building like a lot of healthy habits as a child is so important. Like you're literally setting yourself up for success by like learning the importance of like, you know, like regularly brushing your teeth and just like maintaining your body in general. Like ingraining that into yourself as a child is very like helpful, and like it carries you into adulthood with a better standing. And like a lot of us just don't get to develop those habits, and it kind of sucks. But yeah, if you don't have any other input, we can move on to the next the next
I
point.
mean, I'm sorry that you had to bear through all that, but I'm glad that you get to now have control over your life, and it might feel like it's too late to build those habits, but it's never too late. You're
Oh
still
yeah, for
here.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely never too late to build those habits, and it's always a good time to start. I can only say that in hindsight. Just like now that I'm here now, it's like looking back, it's like, oh my god, like if only I had just like, you know, whatever, done whatever I could have, you know. And it's like, no, I did the best that I could back then, and I'm like working on my fitness now, and that's all that I can I mean, I should be grateful for that, you know. So yeah, you're right.
No, I'm not saying that to say, you know, what you're saying is not valid because now you get to do it, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
I hope that, you know, you remember that takeaway that you get to do it now, and I'm sorry that you went through that at the time. And a lot of people in the comments are saying they relate to everything that you're saying.
yeah. Oh,
Um, yeah. Like I was talking to someone about this the other day. Sometimes it's not even necessary for the parents to find a verse or hadith that says specifically in this situation you need to stop your kids from doing this or that. Sometimes Islam just meshes well with narcissistic or high control parents or helicopter parents.
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. They just latch on to any reason that, you know, because Islam says that this is bad for you. So they're gonna just try to find any reason. I don't know if that applies to your parents or not, but I've seen a lot of examples of that. They just find ways that they can control you that Islam has given them the authority to do.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
yeah,
And so it's like it's almost like Islam just becomes the universal excuse to be a shitty parent in some
yeah.
ways. Like, yeah. Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of that.
Or it might
And
actually be stemming, I mean, to play devil's advocate for the parents here, if they genuinely have this fear that this world is full of distractions and things that'll lead you off of this straight path and all that kind of stuff, if they're that scared about the reality of things and how anything, you hearing a certain song or you playing a certain instrument or, I don't know, playing sports might lead you to be a person who's more likely to go to hell. I understand why they're very restrictive that way. What's sad is, you know, and I'm not defending them to say that's reasonable. All parents should do that. Um, like someone here is saying cult vibes. That's specifically what it is.
yeah,
It's sad that people believe that stuff and then harm happens from it. Not necessarily, I don't know your parents. I don't know if they're good or bad people, but they could be perfectly good, well-intentioned people and cause you so much harm because they're working with assumptions, you know, about the afterlife and God and all that kind of stuff that are simply not true and baseless. Um, so
yeah,
we should really attack those ideas, and I'm telling that to the people on the live stream. This isn't about vilifying believers who cause harm. It's about showing you how what seems like harmless belief can turn into harm even when intentions are good.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally what I was thinking when you said, I don't know your parents, I don't know if they're good or bad people. And like I've thought about that a lot. Like, and like there's no doubt in my mind that my parents are good people. They did the absolute best that they could, but they never thought about what they were actually doing. And I don't know, like, if that negates the first thing that I said, or what, but like uh, they they had an idea of what they were supposed to be doing, and they stuck to it while still also making sure that their daughter still got like a proper education and were set up to be the best wives they could ever be.
I mean, the best Muslima she could ever be, which
Yeah,
automatically involves being the best wife and so on.
yeah,
No, it doesn't negate what you said. And I think people often focus, including ex-Muslims, people often focus on pinning blame. Like, who's
yeah,
the bad guy here or
yeah.
bad woman? Whose fault is this? And if we want to play that game, I mean, one could possibly pin the blame back on Muhammad, but
I blame
even
Muhammad for sure.
I am maybe call me too diplomatic, but I feel like unless I know his intentions, like I don't think the guy knew how big this was going to grow into. I think there was maybe some level of delusion or mental unwellness there. I don't know the facts, but I feel like it's usually we're just trying to find out who sucks here, whose fault is it. But rather than thinking were the caller's parents bad or good, or does Islam is Islam a totally evil ideology that should be eradicated and all that kind of extremist talk, you should try to think what is the reality of that belief? How does it usually show up? And what can we do about that? And what we can do, in my opinion, is get people to question and self reflect more so that even as a Muslim, they'd be thinking, why am I telling my kid not to do this thing? What's the end goal? And maybe they would be less restrictive that way, or they'd be more reasonable.
Yeah,
Or maybe they abandon the belief altogether or realize the absurdity that that a chance that you playing a certain instrument might lead you to go to hell. What kind of justice system is that to begin with?
yeah,
um but yeah.
yeah. And it's so hard to even get to that point of even starting to question anything. Like religion, well, Islam beats down your self-esteem so much, and I distinctly remember this happening to me. But it doesn't even occur. It didn't even occur to me to like recognize or even like validate the fact that like, oh, my feelings matter and like my opinion matters. Like that never occurred to me. And like I was the youngest daughter out of all of my siblings, so like I especially like was forgotten about kind of. But so like it just never occurred to me that like, oh, that there actually is a point in thinking about this. Are you still there? Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I'm here.
okay. And it just never occurred to me to like actually realize like, oh, maybe I do have a point and I should explore this further and maybe try to answer this question. It was always like, you don't know better, you don't know anything, just follow the rules. And just to even get to the point of like, let me actually look at these rules is so hard to come by. And I feel like if I didn't grow up in America, it wouldn't have happened to me. Because I mean, I was a good Muslim and it wasn't like harming me, but I'm only saying that because I grew up in America. But I feel like how far I've had to travel, like mentally, I don't think I would have had the perseverance to travel that far if I didn't grow up in a non-Muslim society.
I mean,
Your
there's some
thoughts?
truth to that, like that being in the environment that you're in some ways sets you up for, I mean, it gives you more room to explore a little bit and more exposure to other points of view. But as I was talking about with the previous caller, for some people it might actually strengthen their conditioning, that they've been exposed already to foreign ideas and all the things that they're warned about, and they over time they've learned why these things are actually bad despite what their senses are telling them. So you never know. Had you grown in a different country, you'd be a different person altogether.
Yeah,
Um, but
yeah, you're
you
right.
know, I'm glad that you're here. Whichever way it happened. Yeah.
Me too. I'm glad you're here too.
Yeah. Thank you.
um, okay, so I mean, all right, so we did exercising. Okay. The second point is the importance of being social. My God, is that like that's like what life is all about. It's making friends, building relationships, and just merriment and enjoying like the work that we all do together to achieve whatever we want to achieve. Like it's really exciting. It's like the spice of life, and we get it in Islam the way that, in a way that is truly meaningful. And my God, that's just so sad. I mean, my upbringing was all about like, oh my God, the chat,
don't,
the
don't
chat
look at the private chat, please. Actually, like, don't look there.
kind of explode. Okay, I won't look at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so being social. Islam, not only did Islam not teach me the importance of making friends and like effective communication, it taught me the exact opposite. Like, oh my God, the exact opposite of any kind of productive interaction with another person. Like, it was all just like authoritative bullshit, like close-minded, authoritative, like nonsense. And like, and I don't know, but maybe you can answer to this better than I can, but like, this is coming from like me observing like my parents and my sister's behaviors, and like, I just never learned or understood like how to actually communicate with people in like a way that engages them and like gets my point of view across, or like, you know, like ever considered that like communicating could actually, you know, be beneficial. Like in Islam, it's just like shut up and obey, and that's all I ever knew. And I never knew that like, oh, I don't have to shut up, and I can like advocate for myself. Like, it's just totally foreign. And like, I think the most like intense lesson that I myself have learned, is that being judgmental and short-tempered will only just set me back. And it sucks that I have been taught to be so judgmental and short-tempered, because that is how everyone around me, all like, you know, especially imams and like my parents and whatever, like no one's ever like been like, oh, I see what you're saying, but here, what about this? And like, you know, like either validated what I was seeing or saying, and then justifying it in a logical way. Like that was just so rare to see in life. And it was always just, no, the Quran says this and nothing else matters. I don't care what you have to say. You have to follow the Quran. And just that authoritative mindset is just so counterproductive in working with people and being able to accomplish something that can actually be meaningful to you. Like, it just makes you a terrible person. And it just sucks that like so many people, I think especially women, are just trapped indoors most of their life. They can't develop socially, and they can't like develop a lot of the soft skills that make you a person, and it's infuriating. Yeah, this chat is crazy. The backstage chat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Try not to pay attention to it because it's yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I'm glad that you have eventually developed those skills. It sounds like it's a
yeah.
realization. Some people still don't have that realization, and I hope that when they hear from people like you, they know that they can, and that's the goal.
Yeah. One thing that like, just one like takeaway, like if you take away anything from any of this, for the point of like being social, so I for a spell I was like involved in sales, and like I wasn't directly involved, but I got a lot of like insight in a lot of my work had like directly impacted sales. So like I remember thinking like at the time, like I wish there was like I don't know, a book or something that like just tells me how like what the best way to interact with people is, and like just how to handle people. And like eventually, like I think through Reddit, like I've seen like a number of times like this book recommended. It's called like How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it turns out to be like the best book for like salesmen, which I think is funny, but like it really, I think, does a good job in like just giving you like the overall like idea of like this is just like this is what people want and this is how you navigate that, and yeah, have fun. And it like a lot of it is just so obvious. It's so obvious. And like seeing it written down in a book is like absurd, but it's like wow, like even though this is obvious, like it is like pretty cool to like have it highlighted as like a like for example, like if you're trying to negotiate with someone or I guess sell them something, it's always best to frame it in terms of what they want and what they get from it. No one gives a shit about like what you the salesman want. They only care about what they themselves want, and that's all they're really going to pay attention to. And so that's how you should like that's how you're going to best engage them, like things like that. And
Do you think
just
that way of approaching people, do you think that actually organically works in day-to-day life, or is it more like a transactional salesman type of way?
it can go both ways. So it definitely is a transactional salesman type thing, but it's also like if you're it's good to keep in mind if you're like talking to like your mom or something and you're trying to convince her like to, I don't know, upgrade her phone. And so like she's not going to care that like it's going to be easier for you to text her or whatever. Like she's going to care about like, oh, I can take better pictures and I can like just like things that she'll, you know, and she'll appreciate. And then it'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I do need a new phone, like stuff like that. So I think like things like that, so obvious, but like it's also like, why was I taught the exact opposite in like growing up in Islam? Like why was I taught that like this is another thing, criticism. Muslims love to criticize. And they're always, you know, encouraging each other to be better Muslims, and you know, like reminding each other of like, oh, this is what the rule actually is, and this hadith says this, and so therefore you're doing it wrong and you need to fix yourself, and blah blah blah. And it's just a pile of that. That's all it is when you go to a mosque. And like no one likes that, and it's better to like, I guess after reading that book, I'm more conscious of like the way that I talk to people, and I realized that like being an authoritative asshole like just doesn't get me anywhere. And like empathizing with people, seeing things from their perspective as well as my perspective, and like seeing where they're coming from is just as important, if not more important, than like my own point of view, depending on the circumstance. And like just being able to like handle people and being able to interact with them without like any unnecessary conflict is so important. And if you don't know how to communicate, if you don't know how to express your ideas in like a peaceful way, you're just going to make yourself miserable along with everyone around you. Like that's just like the bare truth of it. Like
I think that really, when you say that, it makes me think of the Quran itself, the way that the author of the Quran, or authors, the way that the author seems to always include these threats and these promises of hell and promises of this and that. It's not, it's most of the time it's not really about if you do something horrible you're going to be tortured. It's if you don't believe me you're going to be tortured. If you take that approach to anything in life, people aren't going to believe you. So it's baffling to me to see that the perfect God in his best sales pitch, speaking of salesmen, is is telling you, like, sure, he's trying to pitch you something, you're going to get heaven in return, but his pitch is kind of lousy to a lot of people. Like, it might have worked back then, but it doesn't work the same way anymore, and it might be more lousy towards women. um, and there's a lot more of this scaring too. And that's the thing, that's a pitch that we say is valid for a salesperson or for someone trying to get something in life, but that pitch should have nothing to do with truth. Like, you don't express the truth by making a threat or by or by giving someone something that they might like in return. That's not how you get the truth. But anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I just thought of like the best example. Like, if you want to persuade someone to do something, threatening them is the worst way to get it done. Like,
Yeah.
why is that like the first thing that Islam comes to? But yeah. I mean, I guess threatening can be effective, but like, why would you have to resort to that when there's so many better ways?
Yeah, I mean, the truth shouldn't, you don't have to threaten someone into seeing the truth. You just have to present it better, or make a better case for yourself, or just show it more and more obviously. But yeah, threats don't really get you very far. They might
Yeah.
get you compliance for a little bit, but when you threaten someone so much with something that's not actually there, eventually people catch on to that.
Yeah. Speaking of threats, I see that these jihadi people who are targeting you are just full of them.
Yeah. And the moderator is seeing a lot of very terrible things that you're not able to see, thankfully. So
Oh, good.
big thank you to the moderator for that.
Thanks, moderator.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, if we have time, I do have a few other things if you're up for it.
Sure. We have you and then two more callers.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
another caller and the moderator. So we're still
Okay.
good for time for now.
Okay, cool. Well, so the next thing that I wish Islam taught me, or someone taught me, is how to learn. And this is stemming from the fact that the concept of reading for pronunciation and not comprehension. So reading the Quran in Arabic, which I don't understand, never did, and never had to. That really fucked me up as a kid, because in like, especially in like English and like literature class, like I somehow could not get past the concept of just basic literal understanding of what something says, and just memorizing words and phrases, like just what I see on paper, and not seeing beyond that in any way. Like I just, it never made any sense to me back then, and I had no idea like what I was missing, or like it was like I was like speaking a completely different language and I didn't know why. Like things like metaphor, symbolism, overarching themes, representation, like never, like I just had no idea what that any of that even meant. And and on top of that, like Islam taught me that all of that was a waste of time anyway, so it wasn't even important, and don't even focus on that. Focus on blindly memorizing these verses, and you'll be fine. So I guess like learning, the concept of learning about things that genuinely interested me just was completely beyond like my comprehension. Like in my mind, like especially like, I don't know, with like the South Asian upbringing of like, oh yeah, all kids have to be doctors and engineers and lawyers. It's like, okay, so I guess like what you're personally interested in isn't as important as fulfilling what is expected of me. And so, like, doing things that genuinely interested me was completely just a foreign concept. And I unfortunately wasn't able to realize like what impactful work actually means until I reached my late 20s. and and by then it was like, holy crap, like it almost felt like there was like this whole world that I was missing out on that was just so like exciting and exhilarating. Like purpose is everything. And to not have that and not know that I was missing out on that like for so long was so disturbing. Because like, I mean, yeah, without purpose, what are you? But like Islam just takes over purpose and depersonalizes it and just says, oh yeah, your purpose is to do what this pile of bullshit says and not think about anything else. And like to ignore like the things that drive you and the things that make you who you are, and like to ignore the things that are important and meaningful to you are is so sad. Like it's like living without purpose is just like the worst. And like after Islam, once I was able to like discover the whole like, you know, working with purpose, it completely changed everything for me. Like I finally understood why people actually work so hard at something. It's because it means something to them. It's not because they're trying to just earn money or, you know, be a good Muslim or whatever. It like the meaning and the purpose behind it is everything. Like you'll do anything. And to not have that is I don't know, it's just so sad.
I mean, well, that's why a lot of people, they, as soon as they even consider the idea that Islam might not be true, they're afraid of this feeling of this gap, you know, of purpose. So if my purpose was to go to heaven or avoid hell, or, you know, this life is a test and that whole narrative, if that's not true, then why am I here?
Yeah.
And it's so hard for some people to even consider anything else that you're talking about, the way that other people see purpose in life. It seems like not even an option for many believers or ex-believers.
Yeah. And it sucks. Like, and even finding purpose takes so much effort. And like, it's not, I mean, obviously it's not enough to just recognize that you have to do the work. Like just doing the work is tough. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it to like, I don't know, just just knowing that like the work that you're doing means something and means something to you and to other people and makes you happy is like, that's just that's the best. Like that's everything. And like learning how to learn will help you get there. Like I guess and this is kind of related, it's another point, but like the importance of art like never dawned on me as a Muslim. Like art is, I don't know, how do you describe art? Like I think I didn't realize like the importance of symbolism probably until like yeah, probably my late 20s also. And like there's like once you recognize how like the symbolism behind like characters' actions, and like you can glean so much more from like just like, I don't know, I guess you could just understand have a better understanding of ethics and like what good versus evil even actually is. And like art is like the main tool for like social commentary and calling out cognitive dissonance and hypocrisy. Sorry, hypocrisy.
I mean, well, for a second here, if we think about religion as art, I mean, religion does try to do some of these things, and often I I mean, I disagree with the conclusions sometimes, but it does employ sometimes this kind of symbolism. But what's confusing for me as when I was a Muslim, and I don't know if you relate to this, if I were to see it as art is one thing. If I were to see it as, there's a meaning behind this, and it didn't actually happen. This is just a story to tell you what's good and what's wrong. That's one thing. But compared to in Islam, most people, at least the way I was taught it, is believing these events literally happened in that way. I mean, there's symbolism,
Yeah.
but they actually happened in that order, in that way. And it made me feel crazy. So every other story and art is symbolism. This one is art that actually happened in such a silly way. Like, was God using the humans at the time to make a play that's so ridiculous that wouldn't actually happen in real life? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit much to call the Quran a work of art, but that's just me.
I mean, art is in the eye of the beholder, right? It doesn't have to be good
Yeah.
art.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Fine. But yeah, I mean, I guess the point is like diversify your art. The Quran is not, it cannot be the only source. Because that's not even fun. Like there's so many better forms of art. Like play a video game. I don't know. Watch a show.
Mhm. Write your own story.
Or write your own story. Have AI write your stories. Why not?
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah. The concept of learning and being genuinely interested in something and seeking out knowledge because of genuine interest is so fun and fulfilling, and I never got that in Islam because it was always forcefully having to pay attention to this nonsense book of characters that I know how to pronounce, but I have no idea what they're saying. And it's the opposite of appreciating art in any way. You're supposed to like, you know, it's not supposed to be forced and like shoved down your throat, and like your take on it does matter and is important. Like, so I guess explore your take and explore like how you actually feel about it, I guess. I don't know.
Mhm.
So yeah, so actually we just did two. So there was art, learning how to learn, and then this is the last one. Just the sheer vastness and diversity of nature and life. Like once you're like done with Islam and you actually like look at nature and the world, it's so like awe-inspiring. It's so vast. It's so like limitlessly intricate, and there's so much to see and do and learn. Like there's so much. I like fortunately have been able to like travel a lot around the world, and like exploring, like diving into and exploring different cultures is so humbling and like gives you such a refreshing perspective how like other people in other parts of the world handle where they live and their social climate and everything that they're dealing with, and like how different like all walks of life are. Like you don't even need to travel to figure that out, I guess. But like um like the world is so mysterious and crazy and wild. Like go explore it, go find out like what the things are that are beautiful to you and interest you. And you know, it it's just it's so crazy. Like there's so many like just even like seeing the different kinds of animals out there is just so wild. Like so I don't know, I think Islam kind of just dismisses nature altogether, and it's just so sad because nature is beautiful and there's so many like things that you can find and explore. And you know, just even having a backyard garden is so like fulfilling and fun, just watching things grow and like learning how to take care of them. Like
So
it's amazing.
I have to softly push back on that, because I feel
Yeah.
like that depends on which part of Islam. Because a big part of I mean, there is a meditative aspect to it. It really depends on how you were taught it, but there's this idea that look at God's creation. How could this have happened? I mean, the conclusion is boring. The conclusion is because God made it. It's so intricate. God made it. But
Super boring.
yeah, maybe there's room there. I mean, some people, some believers like to stretch it into saying that God intended to say or was trying to convey that you should go and learn the sciences and try to figure out why things work the way they are to at the end of the day conclude that it's all because of God's glory and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of learning in the process. However, I don't think such verses are truly telling people to go learn. It's more like go look at how amazing it is. That's because God. It's not really about the learning process, but that's up for debate, is what I'm saying. I mean, there's even a
Mhm.
verse that from Surah Al-Hujurat that I thought of that you were talking about. That I can't quote it all from memory, but I just looked it up. Part
Okay.
of it was saying, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We created you, we made you nations and tribes so that you can know one another. And I thought, oh wow, that's exactly what she was talking about. The Quran was telling people to meet and mingle and learn about each other.
Hmm.
But then the next part of the verse says, indeed, inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Indeed, the most noble of you to Allah are the ones who are, most believing, basically, the ones who are most mindful. So I don't know if the point of the verse was to say go meet people, it's amazing, or go meet people and just know that the best ones are the ones that believe. There's a lot of
I
ways to
mean,
interpret these things.
I'm definitely reading in that as like go meet people and spread the word, and the best ones will follow you into Islam.
Yeah,
Obviously, but yeah, and like this is pretty cool because like yeah, I definitely do like appreciate the like whatever tangents I'm going on, like things that I wish Islam taught me. Like it's not actually it's not representative maybe of Islam as a whole, because it's just whatever sect of Islam that my parents were following and whatever they happen to know, which in hindsight honestly isn't all that much. So like like yeah, I grew up as a Muslim, and yeah, I was under this like forced I guess status quo because of Islam, but I don't actually know like the details of like, oh, does Islam actually tell me not to be social? Like I just know that as a woman I'm supposed to be trapped indoors all the time. So like I don't know. you
and
know
and that's important. Like I want people to know that
Absolutely,
the,
yeah.
the arguments about whether Islam totally absolutely condones this beyond a shadow of a doubt or not is almost irrelevant to many people actually live and die in their lives with that version of Islam. So that's important to
Yeah,
talk about. I
yeah.
just want to dissuade anyone who would say, but there's this one verse about that. I mean, that's nice, but when you teach people that everything has to be obeyed and it's all facts, you can't always count on every Muslim knowing everything in the Quran and avoiding every bad interpretation. It just happened that way for you, and I'm glad that you're able to tell us about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I'm glad to be here and be able to tell you about it.
yeah,
um but yeah, I mean, I guess my final word on that last point is like I had to go out of my way to realize like the vastness of the world and how many like how different, like just so different the cultures are out there. But that's not even it. It's like all the flora and fauna, the geography, the animal perspective, the animalistic perspective of it, and like how these cultures developed and how like the world today like even came to be. Like it's all just very fascinating, and there's just so much wonder there. And like this is also kind of relating to what we were talking about last time about like replacing the giant hole in your life when you leave Islam, because it replaces your cultural identity and your community, and once you leave Islam you're kind of losing a lot of that as well. But it it might feel like you're losing your world, but there's such a bigger world out there. And it's so much more fun. um And I think that's a good note to end on.
I agree. I think if someone feels like they're lost and they feel like they lost their footing in the world, well, yeah, like the caller was talking about, like Delilah was saying, don't you worry, there's a lot more to explore, and it can be a lot more interesting and a lot less scary and less bleak. I mean, the conclusion of Islam is a lot of people are going to hell, and it sucks. It's the way it is. Um, but life can be a lot more bright than that. And I hope that everyone here and everyone, even not on this stream, finds that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope I didn't sound like insane, like this was all a pipe dream or something, because
No,
like, okay.
we're glad you're here, and everyone in the comments has been saying that they relate to a lot of what you're saying.
Awesome, cool. Well, thanks again. It's fun having these talks and seeing what other people have to say, and you know, I'm sure we all appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, thanks again to the caller. We've got two more. We've got one more caller and the moderator who would like to join, actually. I'll read a few comments and I'll get to the next caller. Seed of Iblis says, Aladdin is always wearing a plain white tee merch. He must be a huge fan. Yeah, I like these white t-shirts for what I do here, because you would never know if I bought three more, or, you know, one was damaged and I bought another one. It's all consistent. It's all for continuity. And yeah, if you want to support me, go buy a white t-shirt somewhere. I'm not going to get any of the money, but still, white t-shirts are fun. A question from Iman Music. Have you ex-Muslims realized that after you left Islam and life in society was still full of traps and dangers and lies? If yes, how did you cope with this realization? It is. I mean, I don't know if it all depends on how you look at it. I don't know if the reality is that life is as bleak as we're warned that it will be, and that without the afterlife, it's all meaningless. I have to concede that it's harder sometimes to deal with the reality of life without a rosy picture or a consolation prize at the end of the day, or at the end of reality, or knowing that there's a God watching and keeping an eye on everything and making sure everything's fair, whether it's now or in the afterlife. It sucks to know that that's not how it is, that you get what you get, and that's just life. But it's good to know that if you make a difference in this world, it matters even more, because no one's watching, no one's going to give you points for it. No one's going to reward the person that you helped with even more in the afterlife. Like, say you gave someone, I mean, this is the simplest of examples, but say you gave someone $10, someone who really needs it. It's good to know that this is really helping them, compared to you gave them $10, but God is watching, and God could have provided that money anyway. And then in the afterlife, God is going to give them infinity money anyway. You know, it feels like good deeds are worth more because they're limited and they actually cost you something. They're not orchestrated by someone. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, but to answer your question, you know, there's ups and downs to it, but I got to say that at least now I'm not nervous about consolidating the reality of the world and the issues that I see with religion with the conclusion that it must be true and something's wrong with me. So it's easier to deal with the reality and the ugliness of the world as it is, rather than the illusion that anything that doesn't make sense in my head about religion is because of me. Yeah. So get a couple more comments. Jordim says, hey, ex-Muslims, when you were believers, how did you deal with Allah torturing people for eternity? Did you think that it was a good thing, or did some try to ignore or forget it, or some other way? I can answer a little bit about myself and then some of the perspectives that I've heard, but that's not inclusive of every believer out there, of course, not even close. So that was one of the things that got me really questioning, thinking not just what if I was one of those people, but genuinely not understanding why so many people deserve eternal torture, not even over crimes or doing bad things or signing a contract saying, if I don't die a Muslim, I'm going to hell. It didn't really click in my head. It didn't make sense, this narrative that Muslims told me, that everyone has signed that contract and God just made you forget. That everyone, before God creating them or bringing them to this life or whatever, God asked them, do you acknowledge that I am real and that you believe in me? And the person says yes. And God says, do you acknowledge that if you don't believe in me by the time that the afterlife comes around, then you have done something bad and you deserve torture? And you say yes. I don't believe that story. Even as a believer, I was like, that sounds like you can't prove that. It sounds very um, suspicious and self-evident. I mean, not self-evident. It's circular and convenient to tell someone, well, you consented, but then you forgot about it. So for me, it was a big point. Why does so many people deserve to go to hell forever? And why is God's ego so fragile that he would torture someone because they simply don't believe? I mean, as a believer, I thought, this is not a very strong case. It's not a strong sales pitch, this religion. I mean, you can convince someone that you get a lot of good things if you join and all that stuff, but it's not really a good sales pitch when it comes to the truth of whether this is actually true or not. So it didn't make sense to me. But I know a lot of believers that have tried to confront them with that question. They would say, well, it's not up to me to decide. It's God who decides. It's almost like they see it as an inevitable thing that's out of their control. So why would they try to struggle with that idea when it might, first of all, it might lead them to disbelief and it might lead them to hell, which is they don't want to do that. Or why even bother when God said that you're not going to understand my ways to begin with? So some people think of it that way. Some believers think, and this is such a weird rationalization, well, you never know. The person might just join Islam before they die. Some people convert. And in my head, it doesn't really answer the issue. But to them, it seems to give them some form of comfort that no one's a lost cause, despite the statistics showing that most people who are born non-Muslim will die non-Muslim. There's some rationalization that as long as everyone has the chance, the possibility that maybe they'll join Islam before they die, then it's a fair system. But yeah, like I said, I can't speak for every believer, but those are some of the perspectives that I've heard. Let's see, what's the next comment? So ex-Muslims Zafar Sahil Samir says, you need to keep some gruesome pics for terrorists, some Prophet and Aisha cartoons maybe. I disagree with that. So for people who don't know, I spoke about it in my previous stream, and it's actually happening on this stream, but thanks to the moderator, we've kept it at bay. I haven't added anyone who's a troll to the live stream, but in the back room, I've seen some horrible stuff, and so has the moderator. And this commenter thinks, well, I should give him some of it back. You know, if what's gruesome to me is human bodies and disfigurement and things like that, what's gruesome to them is seeing Muhammad and Aisha in a cartoon, I presume doing something. No, I don't think that would really, it wouldn't help me in any way. Like I'm not going to feel better when I do that, and it's not going to calm them down. If anything, they'll probably double down on it. And it's stooping to their level. And in a sense, like my criticism of Muhammad is not, it's not just making him, like putting him in a cartoon in a bad position. It's actually about the facts. And that's what stings when I talk about the facts about Muhammad, or what people report as the facts. I don't need to stoop as low as to put someone in a graphic situation that they were never in. I could just show them the facts. And that's what I hope to continue doing. And thank you so much for the super chat, Aladdin's Jinn, Erica, one of the moderators here in the live chat. I'm sorry you have to deal with those raids in the private chat. Buy yourself a cup of coffee. Well, I appreciate it. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. And thanks for the support of people who are volunteering to get rid of these. Okay, so I'll take the next caller, Jiro. I hope you're ready. Hey, how's it going? Sorry about not giving you notice.
Oh no, all good. I was like, whoa.
It's one technique is, like, you know, to kind of get the caller, because I don't know if you're real or not, though you verified, so thank you for that. But anyway, you're here now. Welcome to the stream. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? I hope
I'm doing great.
You're okay. You're like multitasking, just talking to people and watching people just mess the private chat up.
Petting my cat at the same time.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, no, it's my bread and butter. I enjoy it.
Petting the cats?
I mean, all of the above at the same time.
You earn money doing that?
Yeah. That too. Yeah, I'm pretty good at it.
That's great. That's good.
Yeah.
I wish we got paid for. Anyway, whatever. Sorry. ADD.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, I actually had a few things like I wanted to talk about. I wanted to start by building on something you talked uh with Delilah about, which was like seeing Islam as art.
Okay.
Wait. Do you remember me from like a previous call session?
I mean, kind of, but
Okay.
I
I
do
talked
remind
about
me of what
art.
we spoke about. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about like art. Also, I was
Okay.
just like gonna build on that. I realized, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like a visual artist. I always have been, and like because I was born into like a Muslim family, it was always dealt with very differently. But something interesting, which I guess is something positive about Islam, I still am able to view Islam as art. Maybe like not the organized religion itself, but when I was younger, do you guys know those like storybooks, like stories from the Quran? And it's like illustrated in a really beautiful way. And it's just like the story of like Noah, like the ark, or like, different stories about the whale, etc. So I always viewed them as art. I really enjoyed those. And the funny thing was that like part of like part of coming out of Islam for me was because I could view Islam as art. It's just mythology in a way. Like I know the real life events aren't, but it is really fascinating when you get into that type of stuff. So I just wanted to add that random ass thing, like studying about different types of jinns in Islam. I did all of this after I left Islam as well, but it is really fascinating. Like when you get into it, like I would read about Greek mythology a lot, so it's just fascinating to look into Islamic mythology, which is something not a lot of people talk about. But yeah, um, yeah.
So
Anyway,
so
that was really yeah.
how did
Sorry.
you view Islam differently before and after you left it from that point of view about the mythology?
I'll be honest. Ever since I was a kid, I couldn't like fully grasp like the stories from the Quran, for example, being real. Like I was like, how did Noah know that he got every single animal? Like what if animals went extinct? I don't know. I would ask those types of questions, and everyone was like, "Oh, God told him." I'm like, was there a list? like, like you know, just like rationally, I could not wrap my head around how these stories could be real. So like once I left Islam and I like learned more things, it just confirmed like what I had been feeling, like that little voice in my head was probably right. Like there's no record of like a global flood, that type of thing. Like I'm using Noah as an example here, right? But yeah, I wanted to say like maybe by my accent you can guess I'm in North America. So like a caller before this, KK, I think, they were talking about how like North America seems to be getting like more conservative because of the Muslim influence and stuff. Um, in my area, so I'm part of like this online group where it's like Muslims in my area. My mom made me join it like years ago when I moved out of my home country. So like I get notifications here and then. But when this, the drag queen reading stuff was,
Tell us a little bit about that. What exactly?
so basically there were some drag queens and they were being hired to go storytelling in like kindergartens and stuff, right? It's completely age appropriate. They're age appropriate stories. Nobody's dressed like whatever, scantily dressed. I don't know if that's a bad word, but yeah.
I
It's
have
it's
some
like,
thoughts about that, but I'll let you finish your story first.
ooh, okay.
Yeah.
No, let's hear you first.
No, no, to tell me what happened, and I'll tell you how I feel
Okay.
about the drag, story time stuff in general.
Okay. To me, I'll just say I don't have much of an opinion. Do I watch RuPaul? Sometimes, yes, it's funny, but like I'm not gonna make a child watch it, right? But I don't really have an opinion about this. But there were a lot of parents on the Muslims in this city, and they were like so angry. They wanted to join a protest which was being hosted by the area's conservative party. And the ironic thing is, they're against Muslims too. And these dummies wanted to go there to protest against drag queens.
I mean, the
No,
enemy of my enemy is my friend, so I think they
yeah,
would
but like,
align. Yeah.
it was just, I just thought it was so funny. I'm like, why? Like, do you know what you're doing right now? Like, you are the joke.
I
But,
mean, yeah, I see that they do have that kind of aligning in what they call family values.
mm-hmm,
Um, but let's not get into that. That's a whole other tangent. Okay, I'll give you my hot take about drag and
yes.
the whole story time stuff. Um, so first of all, let me start by saying I was reminded recently by actually seeing it, like not intentionally, in new and old movies in the Arab world and plays and things of that nature. The amount of drag is insane. Like they've been doing it for I'm not talking just in the past 10 years, I'm talking the past 50 years or something.
Yeah.
Like black and white and there's drag. And the thing is though about that kind of drag, I'm not really I don't watch a lot of the drag shows that I'm not really familiar too much with them. I know some of them have to do with fashion maybe or like the
Mm-hmm.
makeup aspect of it or whatever, but the way that that drag was done in the Arab world was more like, isn't it funny that this man is wearing women's clothing? And then, but the worst part was the joke was usually this woman is so ugly that she looks like a man. Like, oh, he's gonna marry this woman. Like everyone's laughing that this woman is so ugly. Or there's often this kind of joke, and I don't want to go on a tangent about that too. The whole woman or man, but usually woman, they're so ugly. Let's make fun of their physical appearance, and that's comedy in the Arab world for some
Yeah.
reason. Um, so it really irked me that not only were they in drag for a long time now, but they're using it in a more derogatory way than the kind of drag that I'm seeing elsewhere now. Um, like I don't quite understand why people do or enjoy watching drag. I don't care for it personally, but at the same time, I don't think it's something that I want to protest against. If someone wants to dress like a woman, that's their deal. Like I know they put a lot of effort into how they appear, and they might even be entertaining in the way that they carry themselves. Um, Sometimes I feel like it might be almost offensive to women, like it's a caricature of women. Um, but that's a whole other thing. But at the end of the day, I also don't get what's the relevance of drag with story time? Like, why does it have to be a person doing drag in story time? So I get why religious people lose their minds over that. But at the same time, I want to point to them that it's been done for a long time and it doesn't really harm anybody. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think the hypocrisy is very telling. But I also don't really necessarily care for it being story time. It has nothing to do with story time. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. And honestly, yeah, I agree. Cause like the way drag is commonly done now, at least in the Western world, is I don't think it's offending anybody. If anything, it's probably offending a few people in the queer community, you know?
Mhm.
Like, and the whole thing you said about like drag being could also be seen as like a caricature of women. I felt that way for a long time too, but like whatever. Like drag history, all of that is different. But yeah, like it being story time, I think mainly it's like these people need jobs outside of like shows as well, right? Um And I think they like, from one video that I saw, they were like dressed as like a character in like the story they were telling. So it was just like interactive and stuff with the kids. Nothing like harmful. It's just
Mhm.
Muslims, like, they get scared when they hear the word gay. Like, I was watching a movie with my family, and there was like a slightly effeminate man on screen, and I swear to you, my dad panicked. And like he's like, change the channel. Change. Like, nothing's happening, dude. Let him talk.
Was he starting to feel some sort of way or something?
Right? I thought that too. Oh, come on, most of these people are closeted. But yeah, it's really crazy.
Yeah, I
Speaking
mean, I just wanted people to understand that you don't have to, like, don't let these situations put you in a binary position. Ironically, bringing up binary and non-binary stuff right now, but like, just because people are protesting drag time in a homophobic way, and people are like, they're using it as an outlet to pour out all the homophobia that has absolutely nothing to do with drag time to begin with, doesn't mean that you have to automatically, because you don't like that, to be like, I am pro drag story time now because those people are against it. No, you could still be like, I don't like it, but you don't have to protest it in that way. And it seems like you've got pent up feelings, not about drag, but just about gay people in general. And as someone who likes to openly support the LGBTQ, I personally feel like drag is kind of a distraction, really, and it muddies the waters of like, do they have to do anything with trans people? Is that the same thing? Does it have anything to do with being gay? It's a whole other conversation that I feel like is such a huge distraction from the bigger percentage of conversations that we should be having. But anyway, that's my rant about it.
I agree. Like, I feel like straight people look at drag and they'll be like, this is it. This is all the queer community is.
I know some Muslims who genuinely believe that if a man likes a man, then drag or being transgender is just the next logical step. So, and I don't think that's clear. So I am not against people who do drag or trans people. I know that's not the same. It's not the same group necessarily. I'm not against them explaining what that is and why drag is valuable to them. But I just want the other people to stop conflating it all together and to stop making it seem like one thing is the poster child for everything that has to do with anyone who's not straight. You know? That's the thing about it. But anyway, I've been going on a tangent.
No, go on. Like, you're right. Agreed.
Yeah. So anyway, what were you gonna say?
I just have like a lot of small stories. I just like throw it out. I just remembered another like funny thing from like the Islam is art type of thing. So because I thought Islam could be art, I still think some aspects, whatever. So I would draw, and like when I was younger, I would really enjoy like singing. And like I still enjoy music a lot, but yeah, like when it came to drawing, people were like, "Oh, why don't you do like calligraphy?" And I would just enjoy making like, Spider-Man over and over again. But like they were like calligraphy, and I was like, no, no thanks. But like it was just funny. And then I think I told you this in the last live that I appeared in, but people would scare me and they'd be like, you have to breathe life into your drawings on like the Day of Judgment. And I would kind of get excited about that because I was like, oh yeah, let's go.
So you're gonna be creator on the Day of Judgment.
Yeah, I thought it was like role reversal or some shit.
Yeah.
But yeah. But another thing, I used to enjoy music a lot. So we would listen to like nasheeds and like some Yusuf and Yusuf Islam, the crew, like when we were younger, and I would enjoy their songs. So I would like sing them a lot, and it would be so funny because like my family was so proud of me singing that stuff that they would like in front of guests and people who came over, they're like, oh, go ahead, Jiro, go ahead, like sing something for us. And like I'd be like, okay, yeah, smack that. They're like, no, not that. I was like, what? I'm so confused. Like they wouldn't like me like they would be okay with me like listening to music and enjoying and memorizing it when it was like Islamic songs, but when it's Akon,
I
suddenly
mean,
everybody's throwing hands.
to be fair, Smack That is not the best like role model song, to be
I
fair.
mean, you're right, but like,
Yeah.
why were we all jamming to it like prepubescent little kids? Like,
I mean, that's somewhere where I sort of agree with some religious takes on this. Like music, that some music that is pop music that is, popular, is really, it's not popular because it's sending a bad message or it's teaching a bad lesson. It's popular in spite of that. So it just happens
mhm,
to be popular and people like its catchy tunes or whatever. It's not because of some grand conspiracy that some organization's trying to make kids more perverted or like more, I don't know, into this or that. It's people are often adults are often drawn to things that are more controversial or more, I don't know, on the naughty side of things or things that people think are taboo. And some people don't even pay attention to any of that. And before you know it, the song is a hit. So I feel like the protest, and it's a valid protest, that a lot of songs are sending messages that aren't very good or the language in them isn't great, which I agree with. Then how about you make your own music that isn't obnoxiously about God? Just make it about anything else. I agree with that. Not every song has to be about love or intercourse or drugs. Have other songs, but it doesn't have to be, the other option doesn't have to be, well, God, I can't wait to see God. I can't wait to die. There's an in between.
can't wait to die. That's punk rock, dude. Like,
When you put it that way, yeah. I'm sure there's some Islamic rock out there that would be so
dude,
metal.
no, yeah. Now I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, I'm gonna search this up later.
Yeah.
Some like punk rock machines just going at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. I was just trying to give Smack That as an example. Like, whatever. I'm singing Love Story by Taylor Swift, okay? But like my family's like, no, why don't you sing that Use of Islam thing again? I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. But yeah, I agree with you once more about naughty music, especially when it comes to kids. That stuff isn't good. I caught my little sibling listening to Young Thug the other day. It was not. It was a conversation.
Mhm.
But yeah. Another thing I wanted to build on. Sorry, I got distracted so easily.
That's all right.
Another thing I wanted to build on was KK was talking about purity culture. And I wanted to tell a personal story where God, you guys must think I'm so weird. But yeah, anyway. Um when I was 8 years old, I was in like a public market with my mom, and a man groped me, right? Sorry, trigger warning. And I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, oh, weird place to touch, I guess. And then another person, actually, like some random guy in a suit, came up to me and he was like, hey, did that person touch you? And I was like, oh, yeah. And then, like, that's like, I think the first time I can remember actually facing sexual harassment. Like, yeah. And I was just 8 years old. And my mom did respond well, I think. Like, she responded, like, because she was right there. She, and I don't condone this, but she beat the guy up, right? And like good, like she protected her child there, and that's amazing. But I saw that scene. I thought it was an exciting scene, so I got excited. I was like, whoa, mom just beat up somebody. And they grabbed whatever, my butt, right? And like, I went home and I told my dad super excitedly. I'm like, yo, a person grabbed my butt today, and like, mom beat him up. And like, my dad's response, I thought he would laugh or something. I thought it was funny. But like my dad was just like super quiet, and he's like, okay, don't talk about this again, right? He said, don't mention this story to anyone again. I was like, oh. And that's where I felt like the shame. Like, I started feeling like, oh, it was my fault. And everything that happened, like the way people treated my body after that, was like basically reinforcing like the victim shaming aspect of that incident. Like me, an 8-year-old, somehow, and I was wearing like a big t-shirt and jeans probably. I somehow provoked this older man to touch me inappropriately in public. Like, every time I went out, oh, can't your shirt be a little longer? Oh, can't you wear like a jacket on top? Like, it's July. Why should I wear a jacket on top? It's just like the rules for women are absolutely insane, especially about like women covering up, hijab, all this, right? Oh, hijab isn't just covering your hair, it's covering every inch of your body. It was really crazy. I'd see people wearing gloves and socks, like not like one little speck of skin showing, and like 45 degrees Celsius. It's just it's really crazy. Another caller of yours, I think, talks about fitness. I am really into fitness, but the only reason I got into it in the first place was at the age of 8, after that incident happened, I was suddenly told to lose weight. I was like, oh, it's because your body stands out more than all the other little girls your age. And just like all these like the domino effect of that one incident, of that one person making that one bad move in public, it was just really crazy. And then like as I grew older, I was like, okay, I want to be more comfortable in my own body. I'm like especially this happened after I left Islam. I was like, hey, I've been like lifting for a really long time, so I am like a more buff person. But that, obviously, as you can imagine, is seen as really bad in my Muslim household, right? Oh, you're trying to scare guys away or some stuff, whatever. Anyway,
Isn't that crazy? Like
it's so
you're
funny.
existing and you're attracting guys, and then you do a certain thing and you're scaring them away. Like, what do you want?
Hilarious. Like, what do you want from me? It's like, whatever. I cut my hair short like a few years ago, right? And I really liked it. Very manageable, very fun. It was like a big move for me. It was like super short, right? Like a boy, as my mother said. Um, I like, my parents were like trying really hard to get me to grow it out again. Oh, like, don't cut it again. It doesn't look good on you, etc., etc. And then like I got really fed up once, and I asked my mom like why does it matter? It's not your hair. And she's like, no, in Islam, God doesn't like it when women have short hair. I'm like, who made up that rule? And she's like, God did. I'm like, why though? And she's like, because you can die at any point in time, women should always have longer hair, that is longer than their breasts, so that when you die, your hair can be used to cover your bust. And I was like, I call BS. But then I Googled it, and it was legit. I was like, I've never heard that before in my life, by the way.
What sort of mermaid-ass look is that? Like, what?
Right? I was like thinking like, what about the big busted girlies? Like, how long does your hair have to be?
That's such a stupid rationalization. Like, I want to look it up. I want to know where, like, who started that in Islam. That's
Look it up. I don't remember. I just remember Googling it, and I was like, no freaking way, dude.
Wait, are we talking about in the afterlife or
In your grave, like when you die, you're whatever. And I was like, isn't your body already like wrapped in white?
yeah?
Like, can't you just put like pasties on them? Like, will God know the difference? That's just funny. What about people with cancer? What about people with alopecia? What about like, like people who literally cannot have long hair? What about those people?
I feel like this started, a Muslim guy started it because he likes long hair on his wife, and he just fooled her by saying that, and now it's a thing.
isn't that how a lot of stuff starts? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of like the hadiths we see, like, what was it? I don't know about like Satan peeing in your ears or like peeing everywhere. Like, why does Satan need to pee? First of all, isn't he like an immortal being?
And if I can't feel or sense his pee in any way, is it really affecting me? Like, do I care?
Is it? Yeah.
In another dimension, Satan is peeing on me. Like, okay.
Like, yeah, that's I can't see it, I can't smell it. It's fine.
Is Satan's
Wake up
pee in
one
the room with
with
us
like a
right
yellow
now?
stain on your white shirt.
Yeah.
Like, damn, Satan dehydrated.
Yeah.
But
It's good to be able to laugh about this stuff because,
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Sorry, I
some people
cracked a lot of
say, "Oh no, never apologize for making jokes." I mean, that's how I do. Stars says that she also learned the same thing, and so that they can preserve your modesty using your hair. I mean, the logistics of that too, like they're washing you, whatever.
Okay, can I ask one question? Your
Sure.
modesty. Cool, maybe the hair on your head can cover your boobs, but what about my coochie? Let's first you tell me to like whatever, keep your pubes short. What's covering that shit? I'm so sorry. This is like I don't know if this is appropriate. Like,
I'll let it slide because yeah, what about it? Indeed.
yeah, what about it? Like, is that not the real like modesty area? I don't know, dude. Just so many plot holes. How do people believe this shit? Literally so many plot holes.
Yeah, so now you've got shorter hair and muscles, and they don't like that because guys aren't going to be into you.
Yes. I
So
mean,
how much do they want guys to be into you exactly?
oh dang, I thought you were gonna ask me how much I lift. I was like
Oh,
ready.
how much do you bench? All right, let's
No,
do
no,
this.
no, no, it's okay. I bench a plate though, but it's fine.
Bro, you bench a plate?
Yes,
That's commendable,
thank
to say the
you.
least.
Thank
Yeah,
you. I mean,
respect.
I haven't done it in a couple of years, but it's still my PR, so we'll leave it there.
Yeah, we'll take it. It's a plate.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Anyway, yes, how much do they want? Well, considering they think my body will be completely unmarriageable in a few years. Cause your eggs rot and stuff.
Right.
They want me to get like married, which is yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, I do actually have a partner, and they are a male partner. It's just they're not Muslim. My parents don't know about them at all.
hmm
But yeah, that's like a completely other story. But yeah, it's messed up. But yeah, anyway, parental abuse. Like something did happen. I went I visited my parents after like a year, and basically, oh, we were on the topic of marriage. All right, I could transition from there. Okay, so yeah, married.
I love that you're having your inner monologue out loud.
I'm so
Like,
sorry.
no,
I'm
no,
so
go
sorry.
for it. I'm all for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So great
Um,
segue on the topic of marriage.
yes. So I was sitting with my parents, and they were like trying to talk to me. They were like, "Oh, what kind of person do you wanna, so we can look for him?" And I don't know where they're looking, but they're looking, I guess. And I'm like, "Oh, like nice, feminist, etc." And they're like, "Oh, but he has to be Muslim." And I was like, "Oh, like what if we don't like certain things about Islam?" And my heart is like pounding when I'm saying this to them, because like, it's. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can actually, maybe they'll listen for once. And they're like, oh, like what do you not like about it? And I was like, oh, first thing off the top of my head, sex slavery. Not a good topic to pick. Would not recommend, but I did do it. I'm like, oh yeah, sex slavery. And they're like, oh, that's not Islam. And I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah, of course it's Islam. Like, the Prophet had sex slaves. And they're like, don't say that. The Prophet had sex slaves. Don't fucking say. They're like so angry. They got red so fast. Like, I started panicking because I'm like, oh, But there's we know this. You guys know that. I swear I thought they knew that. But they were in so much denial. I was like, oh yeah, Mario was a sex slave. And they were just crying at this point. My mom's crying and she's like, I've seen him in my dreams. Don't say this about him. I'm like, who? Who? Like, what? What is happening? It was such a cult-like reaction. Like, even suggesting that that Muhammad had sex slaves, which is, by the way, recorded. We literally know this. Like, the Sirah says this, right? Like, it was so crazy. And in that moment, I'm just like, you guys talk about blasphemy? Yeah, sorry, I'm like reading on screen.
I'll stop distracting you.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm so sorry. Why am I doing this?
Right.
Yeah. It's just like, and my dad's like, he has his phone. He's like Googling it. And he's like Googling it for like a good 10-15 minutes. And then he's like, oh yeah, see? Like nothing here says it. Like, no, dude, I Googled it too. It's the first result. Another thing they said was, they're like, where are you getting this information from? Who's brainwashing you? I'm like, nobody. I'm like researching this. And they're like, this is so funny. They're like, those are all Jewish websites. They're Jewish.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
That's like, but what? Like, what are,
I mean,
what
it's either give. Here's my position on the whole. Like, it's a Jewish conspiracy. You either give the Jews credit for Islam or you don't. You can't just half-ass it. You can't just be like, the parts we don't like is because Jews transmitted it. Well, I mean, Muhammad built the religion on a lot of Judaism. So, if you want to blame the Jews, then give them credit for the entire thing.
Yeah. Like, it's just also like yesterday I was reading up on the entire Israel-Palestine thing, and I know this is like a more triggering point, but I really did not know the history of like the Middle East like that. Like what actually happened and stuff. It just sounds like Arab Sunnis just wanted everything. But whatever, that's just like besides the point. But yes, Arab Sunnis during that time, especially. But yeah, anyway, blasphemy. Like they talk about how like nobody should be at the same level as God, but I often feel like Muhammad is regarded as even higher than God. Like the way they talk about him, like you mention Muhammad in the same breath as Allah. Doesn't that make it blasphemy? A lot of times you mention him before Allah. Isn't that blasphemy? I don't know how people don't see it that way. Because they'll be like, oh, he was just a human. But he was the most perfect human to ever exist. He was basically a god. I'm like, you said it. You just said it.
I mean, yeah, it's like trying to get some believers to realize that the way that they view angels in Islam, like the angel that has a certain job, the angel of death, the angel of rain, that's how some polytheists view gods. It's the same exact thing with a different name. So, like the way that they see Jesus, how can Jesus be God and also the Holy Trinity at the same time? Well, you don't say that Muhammad is God, but you basically treat him like one. But you can't see it because it's what you do. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of movements and religions, they see their figurehead as an extension of God. It's just that in Islam, they made such a huge deal about don't actually say that he's God, but you can basically treat him like one.
Yeah, literally. It's just a cult that just overstayed its welcome.
I mean, as most cults do if they succeed.
True. No, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that that conversation that you had with your family, like, seems like it went okay for you. So I'm glad that they didn't take their denial and frustration out on you.
I mean, it didn't. I had to like go like, oh, I'm gonna pray for forgiveness for saying this. And then I just ranted to my friends about it. That's kind of how it turned out.
I'm
Still
sorry
tonight.
you had to apologize for what is in Islam. Like, how crazy is
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I just kind of learned my lesson there to not talk to them about this. They're not normal. Yeah. They're very entitled, and they use Islam to justify that. So
Well,
there's
I want to talk about that for a second, this idea that they're not normal. I'm sure that realization you've had it even more more concretely after that event. Um, what do you mean that by that? What were you expecting that would have made them seem normal?
actually, when I say they're not normal, I kind of say that like over the course of my life. And since this isn't like, I guess, I talk about my emotions, but like my experiences, it's just like the way they have acted as parents. Like this is like regardless of religion, just the way they have been present or absent, or the way they have behaved. I'm like we face, like my siblings and I face a lot of like domestic abuse, domestic violence, right? That I feel like if you're a normal parent, you might stop doing that at some point, or just not do it in the first place.
No,
And
I don't
one
know
thing,
if that's normal. I mean, I'm sorry that happened, but I don't know if that's what qualifies as normal or not, because where I come from, that is normal.
that's true. That's true. Where I come from, it is also normal, but like to a different extent, I think. Like there's also like an abnormal degree there.
Mhm.
So just uh, like, yeah, let's just say that my parents passed that abnormal degree. That line, the thin line between normal and abnormal.
The normal amount of domestic abuse in a Muslim household.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We should make like a chart for that.
Hmm.
No, let's not do that. Anyway, um, yeah. So they passed that a while ago. That even me, growing up in a Muslim household, having access to Islamic sources justifying a lot of parental abuse or narcissism in parents, as you were saying earlier. It like a lot of abusive parents use Islam to justify their narcissism and their controlling behavior. Yeah. So that's where I have beef with Islam and with my parents. But this incident just kind of like I guess me apologizing and stuff was more in fear of my life and safety and the safety of my siblings rather than, you know, just to end the conversation. Because I am a very argumentative person. I will argue. But the only reason I stopped was like, it was a question of our safety now.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, you in that situation, or many others in other situations at home or the workplace or with their friends, if that wasn't a barrier, the safety aspect, the what are the consequences of this disagreement, knowing that there's going to be bigger consequences than just having a loud argument about it, that is what keeps a lot of people from talking about it, including believers. Um, and yeah, people ask why we have this conversations, because otherwise it's hard to talk about this. You might tell a friend or two, but it's not often that you hear hundreds of people listening to it at the same time.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate reality that we live
Yeah.
in. Yeah. Yeah, and I just think like what else? Sorry, I was like making notes and stuff. I'm just like it's everywhere. Yeah. Another one of your callers, they mentioned Muslims love to criticize. Yeah. So that's another thing. My parents used a lot, right? Like, oh, this is Islam and this is not Islam. I actually remembered an example. There's this person I follow. I don't follow them. They just show up on whatever the For You page or something. Um, it's a hijabi girl, but she's like really like her style is really alt, and like she's super punk, and like it's so funny. Like she's a hijabi, but like the people in her comments are like still preaching Islam to her, and I just find it hilarious because Muslims don't want to stand with ex-Muslims, but they don't want to stand with other Muslims either who may just be living their lives a little bit.
No, they do want to stand with other Muslims as long as they conform. Um, and
Yeah.
and well, back when I was a Muslim, I could relate to that. I mean, if I saw a goth hijabi, I don't know, or a makeup artist hijabi or something, maybe I won't make a comment, like I won't be obnoxious and be that person who's like, "Sister, you need to wear your hijab better,"
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. But I would be thinking the same thing. Maybe I'd even show a friend. I'd be like, "Can you believe this woman?" Or even if it was a man, right? Like if it was
Mm-hmm.
a Muslim guy. I'm sure I was misogynistic, but that wasn't the root of it. It was the idea that um, this person, they're misrepresenting what Islam is, or they're not conforming to what it actually is. I worry that someone might see that and think, oh, I could be a makeup wearing hijabi too, and that's fine. When the reality of it is no, like the point of the hijab is to move attention away from you, apparently, and modesty and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I saw it as something contradictory, and it bothered me because A, it was going to mislead other people or normalize this kind of behavior, just excuse my language here. And B, this person, if you give them positive reinforcement, they're going to be doing the wrong thing and maybe going to hell or getting sins because of it. So when you break it down to that, like, I understand, not to excuse the people who are, telling her to conform. I understand why they wanted that way. Maybe some of them are control freaks, but some of them, or a lot of them, actually think that you're straying away from what God told us to do. I don't want you to go to hell. I don't want other people to go to hell. Do what God said. And it becomes hard for me to personally hate those haters, because if you believed in the horrible, horrible hell, then what's bullying a girl on TikTok or whatever, if the as collateral, if the goal is to save people from the horrible hell? Everything pales in comparison to infinite horrible hell, so it justifies a lot of things.
Fair enough. I can't look at it from that perspective. I don't think I was ever like that, even when I was Muslim.
Mhm.
Because I was like, I don't know. I don't know why. I was like super in denial. Like, I'd be like, oh yeah, like women also get like 70 hot dudes in heaven. But that's not true. I found out the hard way. Not the hard way. I mean, I'm not dead. But like yeah. I understand like what you're saying, but that is something I would criticize Muslims for. What is the need to butt into other people's business? Like what's
I mean,
the
the
need?
need is the greater good, or that person's good. I mean, in Islam, there's also, again, I'm putting the apologist hat on. Um, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." If one of you sees something bad happening, change it with your hand if you can. If not, then with your words. If not, then hate it in your
Yes.
heart.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Familiar.
So, and from the point of view, like, if you put yourself in that type of believer's shoes,
Mm-hmm.
again, some of them are just doing it because they're control freaks and they like exerting that power, or they like their high horse. Like, people do that about other moral stances too, not just religion. When someone, for example, recycles and looks down on people who don't, and like shames them for it, for example, things like that. But I think a lot of people are saying it because in their belief system, they're genuinely doing something that's for the greater good, or for the person's good, even. So I do criticize that, but it's important to also find out a way that you're not just telling them, hey, stop butting into people's business, you're also explaining to them why they shouldn't. Like maybe you could twist it as, if you butt into people's business that way, you're only pushing them away further. Or why do you think God would send her to hell for doing that? Like I'm trying to
Mhm.
attack it at the root rather than just telling them don't be rude, because from their point of view, they're not being rude, or being rude is okay as long as they're doing what's right.
Yeah, I guess at the end, it's just Islam is teaching them something that's harming others.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it does that a lot.
And I relate to that. Like I'm scrolling sometimes on my non-Aladdin accounts, and the algorithm still knows that some of my friends are Arab or Muslim, so it keeps trying to feed me these like tangentially Muslim reels or whatever, and
Hmm.
it's I keep clicking not interested, because every time it's like a shit show in the comments. Like I don't want to look, I don't want to know what's happening, because every time I look I'm just disappointed. So I'd rather just not. And that maybe speaks, I know that's just social media reels, it may seem insignificant, but sorry to go on another tangent here, but I think
Okay.
for me, and maybe for a lot of people, it speaks to how we, if not just feel alienated and are alienated by believers, we actively try not to be in the same space as them, because of how exhausting it is to witness them talking about their beliefs in
Hmm.
contexts that have nothing to do with belief necessarily. Um, so I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes I avoid Muslim spaces, not because they know I'm ex-Muslim, or because I don't want to, I don't know, talk to them about why religion is false, or none of that. It's just that it's exhausting to have to be subjected to that in a day-to-day basis.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like it's
Yeah.
just a really exhausting space to be in, I think. Like, I think I talked about this in the previous call, but I'll just mention this again. But I was going through a really, really tough time in my life. And I went to like a Sufi mosque and I was like it was really tough. I was like I wanted to like unalive myself and all that. And I went in there like hoping to like speak to people, hoping to not feel alone, etc., find community. And I'm telling these guys this, and they're nice. They kind of tell me about like whatever what Sufism, etc., is all about. And then these people go on to mention, oh, just like people are going to notice like that your nails are done. People are going to notice that you're wearing makeup and you have leggings on. But like, just ignore them. Like I don't know, like okay, I'm saying it in like a better way than they said it. I'll just say I was like, why are you staring at what I'm wearing? That kind of thing. Like, why are you bothered with these like tiny little things? They kind of said it in like a more you look weird type of way.
It's like, you look weird, but it's okay that you look weird. We're fine with it, but some other people aren't, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like I felt pretty targeted because there were other people around and these people are staring at me. They're staring at my backside as this person points out you're wearing leggings. Like, dude, you don't have to do that. Like it's super weird, right?
Well, okay, here's a, not to say that, your objections are false or anything, but say I was a person in that mosque and I wanted to, like, what would the right course of action be for someone in that mosque? Just not talk about it, or what else?
What do you mean?
Like, how could they have phrased it, or what would they have said in a way that would make you most comfortable?
You know the way I just said it like right now, like them going like, or like the way you said it, like, hey, you don't look like the usual people who show up at these things, but it's fine. Like, you want something to cover up. They usually have like extra scarves and stuff,
Hmm.
right? In the mosque, they're like, hey, you can cover up, like just something more polite. But it didn't feel polite, especially when this person sitting in the mosque had been staring at certain body parts of mine while he was talking to me that he perhaps shouldn't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Like he made it a creepy space and then proceeded to point out
mhm.
these random details on my body. it kind of reminded me like, oh, Muslims love to criticize, like even when they're going like, oh, it's everyone's own life, like religion is personal, but just saying, you shouldn't be wearing that stuff if you're an actual Muslim, like that
Um,
type of thing.
I feel like it's the more that they bring attention to it, the more that it becomes a big deal in their heads. Like I'm sure I've had conversations with someone wearing yoga pants or whatever in the past few
Hmm.
days and didn't even notice it. But back when I was primed to think that any piece of skin or any little bit of tightness in clothing is gonna make my male brain go crazy, um, I would notice it more often. But still, I wouldn't have stared. Like I had more self-control as a Muslim than what you're describing. Um,
Yeah. Although I have experienced like a lot of people, especially being like growing up in a Muslim place, going abroad and meeting Muslim people. Um, yeah, it really does not also matter what your body looks like, but my body is one that stands out a little more. But like dealing with that, like starting from a young age and just like these in like these Muslim spaces where nobody's taught, like given proper sexual education. Nobody's like, like the highest like adult content consuming countries happen to be Muslim majorities as well, or like most of them at least, right?
I
It's
I feel like it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you
yeah,
keep telling people, "Don't look at this, don't look at this, don't look at this," they may not during the day hours of the day. They'll just keep thinking, "I'm not going to look at this. I'm not going to look at this," and then it's pent up, and then they find another way to relieve it somehow, and
yeah,
which might be worse, like either pornography or actually harassing women or staring at women. Why not just have the regular healthy amount of it?
yeah, literally. Like I are there creepy people in the West? Absolutely. Do I get stared at? Like I could wear like a tank top and shorts over here, like in the West, and yeah, I don't think I'll get stared at as much as if I just existed as a woman wearing loose clothes in a Muslim country.
Mhm.
Like it's like from my experience, that's a fact, and that truly sucks. Also, I found out the other day that can I say, because you said pornography, I'm just gonna say porn. Is that okay?
You already said it.
Can I? Oh shit! Yeah, you're right, dude. Can I say? Okay, I said it.
Sure.
Um,
Corn. We're talking about the vegetable. Yeah.
corn. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I found out the other day that the makers of Cornhub were Arab, are Arab. I didn't know that.
I don't know if that's a fact or not. I'm not going to endorse that as a fact till I look it up, but
Okay, but
interesting.
no, I watched like a mini doc on it. Okay, it's legit. But
Yeah.
um,
Probably
no,
not Muslim though, right?
I don't know. I didn't look into that. But
Mhm.
can I name like porn stuff? Is that okay?
Probably not. No, let's not
Okay,
get into that.
okay. There is a certain company, a corn company, and like this kind of like reinforces the Arabness. There is a certain corn company which is, please don't write this in the comments, guys, but it's like the word brothers and an Arab accent.
Okay.
And like, no,
Interesting.
I'm sorry, it blew my mind. I was like, what? But it makes so much sense. Like, I don't know, like, even if they weren't Muslim growing up in like an Arab world,
I,
like, imagine being like so sexually suppressed. It's just also the thing you said about drag and like a lot of old Arab shows and movies and stuff. One reason I heard that they would do that is because they couldn't be like intimate with, like, I'm talking about just like shows and stuff, but like they couldn't be intimate with women, or like, you know, watching women dance and stuff is haram. So a lot of people would hire men to dress up as women and do like provocative dances in a lot of Muslim places
Interesting.
because that's quote unquote halal.
I'm curious to, yeah, I wonder if we'll ever know actually how, like, can you actually study this from a historical perspective in the Arab world? Like, how many people are going to be willing to talk to you about it? Where are you going to find the documentation?
True.
But that would be interesting to find out. Yeah. This
Yeah,
is it's
I'm just like
interesting.
hitting you with like some stuff.
It's so interesting talking to you because you never know where the conversation is going to go. But
Yeah, sorry. I'm just, I guess it's part of my charm.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, we can end it here. You
No,
also
let's.
don't-
Is there anything else that you want to talk about? I don't want to end it on that.
No. See, I can keep talking. I talk a lot, so.
I mean, give us one more topic before you go.
One more topic? Yo.
Yeah.
No, you
Not
give me
before
a
you end.
topic. I'm sure I'll have a story about it.
What did you think about the story of Noah? Someone had mentioned it earlier on the stream, the Ark of Noah.
Yes. What about it?
What did you think about that when you first heard it as a kid?
I thought it was like my dream job. I want to be on a boat full of animals.
Doing what, like auditing them?
Me?
Yeah.
What?
Like auditing the animals, or like what are you doing? What's your
I don't know,
job?
they'd be like my friends. They'd be my homies. Like I only have like animal friends, or I have like whatever. Weren't there also just like 2 humans on that ship? Like
No, there are more than 2 humans, I think. Like,
okay.
It was Adam and his Noah and his the people who followed him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's always the people who follow them.
Yeah.
It's like we'll never know. But yeah, I thought it was great. I thought I would love to be on an ark, sailing the waters with like my animal friends. Oh my god, actually now I have a story. So I was like obsessed with the idea of heaven because like they made it sound so fun.
Mhm.
So like we had like a Quran teacher, and she would tell us like, oh, you know, there's rivers of honey, blah blah blah, and there's like trees, and those trees have whatever you want. And I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, there's like mango trees, there's like peach trees, etc. I'm like, so the trees can grow whatever I want. Do they have pizza? And this person, she's like she stops for a second. She's like, what? And I'm like, pizza. Like, if it's heaven, like, they must have pizza trees, right? Like, I'm imagining, like, a whole pizza just hanging like a fruit from a tree.
I mean, I'd imagine it more as a flower. Like, the flower is the pizza.
Oh, that's pretty.
Right?
I was not a very imaginative kid.
I mean, you imagine trees that had pizzas. I'm pretty sure you're a very imaginative kid.
I was just obsessed with pizza. Like, yeah. But yes, I guess that is imaginative. But this lady ruined my idea of heaven because this woman says yes, and I'm like, fuck yeah, like heaven. I'm gonna be good, so I can have like pizza trees.
How did that ruin your idea of heaven?
What?
You said she ruined your idea of heaven.
Oh, did I say ruined? I meant like she really solidified my like she ruined it because she was like I don't know, she just made it like everything is possible, which I guess like I ate that shit up. I was like, yes it is. You bet it is.
I mean, endless pizza sounds very appealing, but not if I have to order it through a kid butler. Like, I'm against child labor.
Oh my god, so. I'm imagining this in like your like the art style and your skits, like the little cartoons. That would be so funny.
Wait, what about it? Like ordering pizza in heaven?
Like ordering pizza, like, you know, your little the whatever culture.
Yeah.
culture, right? That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks to the artist for making that happen. So I can, give me your imagination and the artist's abilities, and I can make any of that happen. So
Oh my god,
pizza,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
There's pizza on trees too.
yeah.
But
My favorite thing about heaven, I mean, in my mind, when I thought I'm gonna go to heaven, hopefully someday, is I'm gonna be able to fly like all the time.
oh my god,
Yeah,
that sounds really cool.
and I'm kind of disappointed I don't get to do that in real life, unfortunately. But that's yeah, that was the most heartbreaking thing about becoming an ex-Muslim is losing my dream to fly. So
That
yeah,
that really sucks.
yeah, it's definitely not the most
I'm sorry.
heartbreaking thing, but
Like support and
yeah,
prayers, I guess. Prayers to like whatever the YouTube algorithm.
thank you. It's been very hard on me and my family, but
Yes,
I'll get
it's
over it.
okay.
Yeah.
Just take a bunch of psychedelics, man.
I do not condone the use of drugs.
Me
Just
neither.
everyone, yeah,
Drugs, guys. Like
yeah. Well, it
unless
was
it's like good drugs, which is fine sometimes.
life is my drug. So go outside and touch some grass and have a good life. That's my hot take for the stream.
You had a
Yeah.
lot of hot takes. I'll just throw this
Yeah.
out. But anyway, thank you. I will leave you alone now.
No, this was really fun. I'm sure everyone can also attest to that. Like someone was saying, I think Erica was saying, Jiro has a story about everything. So make
I
sure to come
do.
back and like give us a story about something else sometime.
Oh my god. Okay, well, I have so many stories. Yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for
Peace.
joining, and we'll talk to you another day. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Thank you everyone for joining today. I'll read one comment and I'll answer to it, and then I'll do the outro, I suppose. Yeah, for those who don't know, the stream was still attempted to be hijacked by some trolls the same way as before, and a huge thanks to the moderator, Stars, for making sure that I don't have to deal with that myself. So thanks to her, no one here had to see anything. But we're still here, and next week we're going to be back in a different way. Maybe I'll have a different way for people to join. I'm still working on the back end for that. So the comment that I wanted to address said, Iman Music says, do you think being ex-Muslim makes you more arrogant or kind of hinders your sense of humility? What does humility mean outside of religion? That's a good question that I don't know if I can answer the entirety of it right now, but I'll give it a shot in a different way. So there's this idea I hear it a lot in Islam, that those who challenge the claims of Islam are arrogant. And there's this archetype of a kafir, a disbeliever, who says not only your religion is false, or I don't believe in God in general. It's more of a positively making a claim that I am my own God, or I am God, or I know what created the universe, or you're wrong and I know better than your God. Like there's this idea that a disbeliever is comparing themselves to the hypothetical most powerful entity in existence. I don't think most disbelievers are actually saying that I think as a human being, I am more powerful than your God if it exists. So I don't think that was what the commenter was implying, but that's a sentiment that I hear a lot in Islam. It's, if you don't agree with me, you must be an arrogant person because I have the truth and you're just being arrogant. You're denying because of arrogance. I think that people can disagree on things not out of arrogance necessarily, but because they genuinely see things differently. And I don't know exactly how to define humility. So let's Google that real quick. What does humility mean? It means a modest or low view of one's own importance, humbleness. In that sense, that makes me think for a moment. So God is not humble at all. He's the opposite of that. I don't know if God claims to be anything to do with humility. I don't know. Do you think I have humility? I like to think so. I mean, I don't want to underestimate myself, but at the same time, I don't want to overestimate myself. I don't walk around thinking that I know better than everybody about everything. And the question said, do you think that being ex-Muslim makes you arrogant or hinders your sense of humility? Even when it comes to the topic of God, my position on it is I'm confident from everything I've seen and from extrapolating on everything I've seen that these religions that say God told me to tell you so and so are all man-made, because as far as we know, we heard them from usually an actual male man. But we're hearing them from other humans. So my position is, unless I see otherwise, I'm not convinced that God sent down a religion through any of those people. And I don't positively assert that I know how the universe began. I know the purpose, inherent purpose of the universe, if there is one. What I claim is, I think, based on the way that religions are, based on what they preach, based on their method of transmission, and the very clear to me human influence, human tone in the supposed God's words, that all religions that we know of are man-made, meaning ideas that humans had either intentionally or unintentionally, leading people to certain conclusions about God. I think most people are well-intentioned in their belief. They don't believe something because they want to be arrogant. They actually believe that it's true. So even in that position as an ex-Muslim, it's not a position of arrogance of saying, I know that I am better than your creator. That's not what it is. I try to be humble, and I think that I used to be more arrogant as a believer. Even back then, I wasn't a super arrogant person, but I had a little bit more of that arrogance that I know the truth. If only those people could see it. I don't know the truth because I'm a good person who deserves to know the truth, but I just happen to. And that gave me some level of arrogance. But even then, I felt like I didn't deserve that arrogance. I don't know if I'm answering that question or if I'm going around in circles. So I hope I answered what humility means. I think there's a lot of focus on humility, like false humility in Islam, or the idea that if you agree with me, you have humility, or if you're submissive, you have humility. If you disagree, you're arrogant. I don't think it has to be a dichotomy that way. But at the same time, I do acknowledge that a lot of people who do leave religion, and I understand why, they become arrogant in their position because they're receiving a lot of arrogance from believers, obviously, or maybe because they're an arrogant person, but they say, how stupid of you to believe in your religion's fairy tales. You're so silly. I know more than you. I'm smarter than you. And sometimes they're even directing that at their past selves. Like, it might be stemming from them thinking, how was I so stupid in the past? I am better than that person now. So by extension, I must be smarter than every believer, just like I am smarter than myself when I used to be a believer. Some people's lack of humility stems from that. So in my answer, I'm not trying to say that when you become ex-Muslim, you become a humble person. Not at all. I acknowledge that some people's anger and shock and, I don't know, disbelief of what they used to believe sometimes makes them lash out and makes them arrogant about their new position. But I think ideally you should be open to being wrong and you should be humble. So I hope that answers that. And Nim Grace is saying, do you have Hoya plants in your house? The ones in the background look like pothos. Sorry if it's off topic. I love how you have set up your plants. I don't think I have Hoya plants. I don't know what they look like, but I will look them up. But just to give everybody some good news, the pothos plants in the background, that's all one plant that's going all around. Like, I can't point here and here and in the back. And I have propagated that. So somewhere else in the house, I've got it growing again in soil, all because I cut it off of a couple of leaves here. So my pothos plant is thriving and multiplying around the house. So there's that. Anyway, yeah, I haven't kept up with all the comments, but I'm seeing a lot of very sweet comments, and thank you all for that. And thank you for joining today. Today's live stream was a success, and so will next week's be, inshallah. And next week, I'm going to open up the floor not just for female callers. I've done that just because their space was rated before, and I need to do this at least once a month, where it's just for female callers to make sure that they get their space and opportunity to talk. But next week's live stream is going to be for all callers, believers, non-believers, ex-Muslims, non-ex-Muslims, people who are Christian, otherwise, male or female, or anything in between. So I'll see you all next week. And as always, think critically and think for yourself. Bye-bye.